Are you ready to live a better life? Do you want to have fulfilling relationships with your partner, children, boss, colleagues? Do you want to learn how to overcome obstacles and challenges that are an inevitable part of our everyday life interactions? You have tuned in to the right podcast. Dorice Horenstein, author of Moments of the Heart, is ready to do just that. Sit back, listen, and enjoy the learning as Dorice shares her stories, Jewish wisdom, and a bit of the Hebrew language, and makes this world her classroom.
Hello, Natalie. I am so glad to have you here on this podcast. And everybody, you're in for an amazing treat. Are you ready for this? Because I want to tell you about a new, relatively friend of mine, Natalie Siston. And here's a little bit of a bio about her. And as a matter of fact, I'm not going to read, I'm going to tell you, okay? She's from a small town called Republic, Ohio. And all of the lessons that she has learned, she has put with her life journey, she has put into this book called Let Her Out. I have been reading this book, and every few seconds I have this, oh my gosh moment. So I hope that you will all really enjoy listening to this, watching this YouTube and Facebook Live, and let us know. So first of all, welcome, welcome, welcome. She's a coach. She is a professional speaker, and we're in for such a treat. So welcome, Natalie.
Oh, Dorice, thank you so much for having me here. I just can't wait to vibe off your energy because you've got some of the best energy of any human I know. So this is meant to be.
Oh, well, for all of those who are just listening in, we had some laughing moments before because as you can see, this is not my usual scene. I usually am in my office with a background. And right now I'm in Philadelphia in my daughter's home. So there was a car passing by honking and we were just like starting to smile and we were hoping this is not going to happen while we actually are doing the interview. But if it does, that's life. Okay, so we're gonna go. Natalie, it's an honor for me to have you here. And reading this book, I have so many aha moments and so many questions for you, but I want you to first share what made you write this book?
Well, the honest to God truth is that rejection made me write that book. Rejection and COVID made me write the book. So that's the story. You have to get to the very, very, very end of the book. It's actually the epilogue, but I presented the idea as a TED Talk in 2019 and was rejected. And I'm a serial rejected person from TED Talk. Someday it will happen, but I'm not forcing it anymore. And so I presented as an opportunity to do a keynote at several women's events in my market, which is Central Ohio, in early 2020. I got those accepted and they were all canceled due to COVID. So I'm sitting on this title and a paragraph because that's all I had at the time, Dorice, because that's all you as a fellow speaker know. That's really all you need to get in the door is some good video footage, a great title, a great paragraph to hook like what you're going to learn. And I thought I can just forget this or I can actually do something with it. And I ended up turning it into a book. So in some ways, it is truly the beauty of what happened last year. I made some lemonade out of those lemons.
You know what? What you are so courageous and vulnerable in here, but also in your book, which I think, I'm going to show it right, which I think is the selling of this book is how you're showing your truth, your courage. The fact that you start saying this book was because I was rejected. Most women, I don't know about people, but I'm focusing on women here, they will feel, well, I don't want to say that I was rejected. I feel bad, right? And we all have been rejected. Tell me one person that always was a yes, ma'am kind of the thing. The door is open, walk through the TED Talk stage. No, we get so many no's before we get the yes. And you are vulnerable, but true. And you're saying it out. And then I was reading your book. I mean, there's so many parts where I nodded my head, when you talked about Greece and Fiddler on the Roof, you got me there. I mean, like, yes, I start dancing, Fiddler on the Roof. Yeah. Yes, for those of you who don't know, Natalie, love of music is amazing, contagious. her piano skills and the fact that she went away from music and then came back to music. Tell us what happened when you reintroduced the music back into your life.
Oh, this is great. And I think for those who do read the book, music is a thread throughout. You learn all about my musical escapades in high school where I played Jan in Grease. I played Hodel in Fiddler on the Roof. Those were my two capstone roles. But what happened, I was a piano player, trombone player. I played up until college where I thought I would go to the Ohio State University and be in the marching band. That was always my goal. And then I was rejection once again up here. So I was cut from the band and decided, okay, this is my sign to just forge a new path. So really from the time I was 19 years old until the time I was in my mid 30s, music didn't have a place in my life. And I was at my coach training, Dorice. So this was in the fall of 2016. And I sat down, I remember it plain as day. I was sitting with now someone who's one of my best friends, John. He actually texted me right before this because I'm writing the foreword for his book. And he's like, I'm sending it to you today. But John and I are sitting in the courtyard of a hotel doing our coach training. And it's the point where you're trying to like do your life wheel and figure out what's missing in your life. And John's like, what's missing? And I said, music's missing. And he said, okay, well, go figure out how to get it back. And I did. And I very quickly realized that I go to church every Sunday, or at least pre-pandemic did. So I was already there. I loved the choir that sang during service. So he's like, okay, we'll go, join the choir. And I emailed the choir director the next day. He said, yeah, show up, rehearsals tonight. And from that moment forward, I've been singing in the choir, and bringing it back was just a reminder that these things don't have to be hard. I didn't need a ton of time. I didn't need money. I didn't need equipment. I just needed the commitment to say, this makes me more of who I am. And therefore I'm going to find space and time for it in my life.
That is beautiful. And what I loved also about this, as you were talking about the music, is that you shared your excerpt from your diaries over the years. And that's really what was I think it was a beautiful thread connecting you from when you were 14 to now, and talking about all these times in your life where you were rejected, but I want to actually turn it from the rejection into all the hard work that you have done as a teenager. You were not shying away from getting a job. And I think that is a beautiful thing. As I now have an 18-year-old who works as a barista in Dutch Bros, which is a coffee shop in Oregon. And the value, raising two older kids with the value of working, I think it's wonderful. So tell us, where did you get your determination to be a leader, to speak at the ground fairs and be a professional speaker there and be a champion for this times, but also holding a job, doing the beginning maintenance cleaning at the school and then transferring it to other things. Tell me, where is that motivation and ambition, which you, by the way, talk a lot in the book about having an ambition and how important it is to have an ambition. For you, it starts very young. Talk to us about the concept of ambition.
Absolutely. I think, and I'll point this out because so I've had a couple book clubs to use my book, which is great. And then a couple of them have invited me. And one of the things they've said, they're like, hey, it's actually been hard to connect to you because that was not how I was as a teenager at all. So you're right. I have ambitious, determined, hardworking. It's in my DNA. I'll get to that in a second. And I've said to them, I said, that's the beauty of this book. You can appreciate the journey I was on and just recognize that's not my journey. And for others, it's very similar because they themselves have embedded that strong work ethic. So ambition and work ethic to me are intricately connected. And I actually didn't put this part in the book, but it's been something I've blogged about, is growing up in a small town, seeing my dad work a factory job and work a family farm. You're surrounded by work ethic every single day. And, I grew up in a rural farming community. And in that environment, almost everybody has multiple jobs. It's either multiple jobs or you're just wearing many, many hats. And one of the hats is to help be a part of the community and help make the community successful. So ambition for me was watching everybody around me put on these multiple hats, depending on the day of the week, the time of the year, that type of thing. And I just thought that was normal, Dorice. I just thought it was normal that we all do 14 things at a time, because that's what you do to make a small town work. And so I've brought that idea of ambition with me into my, my early career, which started in Silicon Valley, back to Ohio, where I worked in a Fortune 100, and now, work on my own business and with coaching startups. And it's like, I don't know, it's just ingrained in who I am. And what it's created for me is just a massive capacity to say yes to things and go for it, and then figure out how to scale that across either my life or the lives of other people. So it's just saying yes and stepping into what you can do.
I actually think when you have this ambition and this hardcore and principle of working and the value of working, I think many teenagers nowadays should have that value embedded in them. And as I said to you before, there's so many connections between you and me that I see through the book, shared experiences. When I was in 9th grade, I cleaned houses in Israel. I cleaned homes in Israel. So then I will have money. And you know what I did in the first money that I gained? I went to the store and I bought Levi's pants and Nike shoes, because back there in Israel, that was the symbol of you have money, you have made it. And then when I worked a little more and I gained more money, I went to my dad and I said, Abba, which in Hebrew means dad. I said, can you go to the bank and exchange this money to dollars? Because one day I will live in America. I was 9th grade. So one day I will live in America and I will need dollars.
Oh.
It is. So the value of hard work, my dad worked in construction. My mom sometimes worked 3 days, three jobs to keep the family afloat. So I understand the need to work, but also the value that it provides us. I mean, don't you think that the fact that you worked when you were a teenager put your life in a particular trajectory and the values that you have gained through work?
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting for me, and I had a coach point this out to me many years later, because I didn't see it. You always have a coach who can draw those threads for you. And he said, you've been an entrepreneur your whole life, right? Because I didn't go work at the McDonald's in the town. I cleaned houses just like you did, Dorice. I moved up to clean dorm rooms. I was a church choir director. Like these are things you've got to go find, and you've got to figure out your own path. And I've worked in really large organizations, but I feel like I've always shown up as a builder in those concepts. So it's absolutely, it serves you. And, I'm raising 2 daughters in a suburb now where they're pretty coddled, and we talk often, like, where do you think you're going to want to work when you're a teenager? Because we're laying it out to them, like, this is an expectation that you will have a job somewhere. And, I'm hoping it's either the cookie company or the ice cream shop, but we'll see. We'll see what my health coach says by then.
I love that. So another thing in your book that resonated with me is, there's many things that resonated, but one of them was that the love that you have for your parents and your roots and your sister, and the lessons that you have learned in your young age. It was like the lessons from mom and dad kind of thing. And then you literally, on page 40, you went down through those lessons. Share with us maybe 1 or 2 of these lessons that you have grown up with that you wanted then transfer to your children.
Absolutely. Oh gosh. And these were primarily lessons from my mom. So a year before I wrote the book, my mom retired from her job, and I dedicated a blog to her and said, here's what I've learned from you through your career, Mom. Cause she's worked as long as I can remember. She stayed at home when I was really, really little, but I don't remember those days. I remember my mom being a working woman, and she started out as a secretary and ended her career as a COO. So these things are all, there you go. The ambition, you can see that happen too. But one of the things I saw from my mom was, you can complain, but only if you're willing to make things better. And my sister and I have talked about that a lot, because we oftentimes will get on the phone and we'll like, there's a, complication, a situation, and immediately we go to problem solving mode. And one day I said, Nikki, why are we wired like this? Why do we immediately go to solution? And she said, because that's what we know from mom, is that we go from problem to solution. And so when I was a leader of a team in the corporate world, that was one of my key rules as a manager, was you can bring me a problem as long as you've at least started to think about the solutioning. And it's something that I'm teaching my daughters too. It's like, you're able to complain about things as long as you're willing to be part of that solution. And I think honestly, a lot of the situations we find ourselves in life would be better if we all go forward with that mindset. Like, I can have an opinion and I can complain as long as I'm willing to do something about it. 'Cause it's like, if you're not willing to do something about it, then just be quiet.
Remember what did Breanne Brown said in one of her big talks, right? If you are in the arena with me, then yes. But, don't complain or don't give me your opinion if you're not in the arena with me. Right there in the mud, trying to work this. I agree. Beautifully said. Here's another thing so for those who have not read this Letter Out, here is your invitation to read this book. In the book, Natalie talks about 4 different stages. And they all start with the letter R, so it should be easy to remember, right? and now Natalie is going to tell us about the 4 stages very quickly, but just to entice you all, because you got to read this. It will resonate with you, and it gives you a step-by-step into creating your own Let Her Out, which is fabulous. So share with us, Natalie.
Well, first of all, I'll just say kind of the tagline for the book is where life story meets life coaching. So it goes back to those diary entries, lots of stories. So I enjoy telling stories, so it goes by quickly, matched with life coaching, over 100 questions throughout the book. So you're set from that regard. It's the best $15 you're going to spend if you're not quite ready to hire a coach at this point in time. Just get the book and do the work, and you're one step there. Then you call me or Dorice and we talk further, right? Okay, so the 4 steps. First is remembering. And this is, I call it's blowing the dust off of those photo albums, those diaries, those journals, those archives. It's the physical things that can remind you of who you were when you were younger. And so it's literally going back and digging in the boxes and finding the stuff that will remind you of those moments when you were really her.
Okay, so here we go. Step number 1, remember. Take a second here and think. And if you need later on, if you're listening to this later on, pause it right here and remember something about you in your youth, something that you treasure, something that maybe you forgot. Okay, so that's number 1, remember. Number 2.
Number 2 is reconnect, which is different from remember. It's nuanced, but it's different. So remember is blowing the dust off. Reconnecting is bringing her back into your bones. So it's feeling the feelings she felt, remembering and reconnecting to those moments in time when you were fully alive, or maybe a deep disappointment, or a yearning passion, or something that just brings her back into your body. And for me, it was reading the diaries literally, viscerally brought me back into the place where I could reconnect to her deeply.
Natalie, another thing we have in common is that I also have diaries from my youth. And so now I've been here in Philadelphia and all my diaries are in Portland. But let me tell you, as I was reading this book, I was thinking, I should go back and read my diaries, because I've read some of them when I was teaching in the education world. I wanted to teach something about anger, because one of the entries was I was angry at my mom. And then I was angry at my mom, but I did not say it to my mom. I said it to my diary. And that was a lesson I was teaching teenagers. So not everything you feel you have to say. And that was one of the lessons I used. But I thought, I have to go to the diary and glean some more wisdom from that diary. So thank you. Thank you for bringing.
I can't wait till you go back and read those, and we'll do this again and you can reflect on what you came up with. Because I also want to comment that it wasn't all this like profound things that the quotes are you see in the book. It's like how many boys I liked and had a crush on, and the things I didn't tell the people. Yeah, it was equal parts like, cringing, and then the other part was like, oh my gosh, she was amazing.
Oh yeah, okay. I remember those 10. Okay, third section.
is the longest part of the book, because it's the longest part of the work you're going to do on this journey, both when you read the book and beyond. And it's recognizing and removing the barriers to her. So, you know, when I do keynotes on this, I do a little transition to say, so if we've remembered her and reconnected to her and she's so awesome, what happened to her? When did she start going and hiding? When did she stop playing full out? When did she lose her ambition? And it's because we put these barriers up, some that are built immediately, some that are built, you know, brick by brick, day by day. But we have to take a step back and recognize for ourselves, what is the barrier that's keeping her away? And once we can recognize them, because we can't do anything about them until we recognize them, what do we do about that? Do we just kick that wall down and say enough? Or do we start to just take it down brick by brick? And, you know, some walls will build back up and we take them back down, but it's recognizing and removing the barrier. So I described 9 barriers that I personally have experienced. And I'm sure that any reader will connect deeply, at least to one of them or more of them. But it's an invitation then for you to say, okay, I went through this experience to identify how Natalie came up with her. So I'm going to do that same experience and figure out what my 9 are, what my 5 are, what my 15 are. That way I can actually start the work to tear them down.
And, you know, that is where I think your vulnerability took a way up into this amazing, I was in awe as I was reading this, because it takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery for somebody to put themselves out there and to say, these were my external barrier, these were my internal barriers, things that I have put on myself. And that's when I also find a very incredible connection between the work you do now in positive intelligence to that is to overcome those barriers is to find that empathy place and explore other ways. It's amazing.
I know I love that section of the book because, you know, and depending on the audience I'm with, usually there's one that works really well, but there are parts of that I didn't intend to publish. I was like, I don't think I can publish this because it's too much. It's too vulnerable. And now those are the sections that I get the texts from people I know about. They're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea you were going through that. I had no idea you were experiencing that. And now they see me differently. And they're like, and now we can have a different kind of relationship because I see that part of you differently. And so that's my invitation to say, put it out in the world then and share with the people that are close to you that these are the things that are holding you back from your true self, and invite them in to be part of your 4th and final step of the journey.
That was beautiful. And then you had the 4th was remove, right? Remove the barrier. So it was recognize the barrier and then remove the barrier. These are the last 2 R's, which again created such a wholehearted book, really a wholehearted book. And I speak about wholeheartedly because I believe, you know, my book is called, you know, the 4 relationships, how a person should live wholeheartedly. And I think when I read your book, it really resonated with somebody who's bringing their full self forward, feeling complete and at peace with who they are and their next step in life, and knowing that some things are still unknown, right? Some things you don't know. You're doing something for now, but you don't know what the future is.
Exactly. Even when I wrote the book, it published in November, and I was on the verge of doing work, and that's how I met Dorice, and that work is growing every single day. I had no idea what would be ahead of me, right? It's like every day keeps unfolding and it's amazing. And that's where the final step is to let her out. And I share my story of kind of just putting aside all those barriers and saying, I am enough and I can step forward into the world and be authentic and be myself. And there was it was a many years process for me to do that. And to Dorice's point, it's going to keep unfolding. Yes. And I now hope that, you know, and obviously we're speaking mostly to women here, although I've had many men read and say, as long as I insert him with her, I'm good. But, you know, I think of all my colleagues who are still in the corporate sector. I think of the coaching clients I've worked with from many different sectors. And I think that, so my let her out was very much about kind of releasing the traditional professional norms and going out and starting my own business and that sort of thing. But for a lot of people, they're not going to go out and start their own business. That's not their let her out journey. And so I'm hoping that this encourages women, no matter where they are, in a workplace, at home, if they're taking care of their children, figure out a way that you can let her out there, because the whole world benefits way more when she's present versus when she's silent, seething, biting her tongue, nodding her head yes when shouting no on the inside of her body. Like, these are things we have all experienced, every single one of us. And if we can just start to chip away a couple of those layers, everybody around us is going to be better for it.
Yes, yes. Beautiful words, Natalie. It has been such a pleasure to have you on Facebook Live, on my YouTube channel, on the podcast. And I hope the listeners, the viewers have just really benefited. Again, I couldn't recommend it hard enough. Let her out. So if you're there, if you're a man, by the way, and enjoyed it, that's awesome. Buy the book, gift it to another person that you love and care about. Thank you so much, Natalie. God has blessed me by bringing you into my sphere through the positive intelligence world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dorice. This has been amazing.
Bye, everybody. And I hope you'll join us next time in the next podcast. Feel free and encouraged to like it on YouTube, like the podcast, and leave a comment. Thank you. And make your day the best it can be.